Hello, lads and others. Hello, CIA. Hello, friendlies and unfriendlies alike. Today, I'd like to talk about history. There's a famous saying, I believe it's attributed to Karl Marx, as a matter of fact. But don't hold that against it, because it's a good saying. The saying goes something like this. History repeats itself. The first time as tragedy, the second time as farce. With that in mind, I thought it would be interesting to talk about the trial of Adolf Hitler. Now you say to me, what are you talking about, you historically illiterate man? Adolf Hitler never went to trial. Adolf Hitler committed suicide at the end of the war and never had to face the Nuremberg courts. Well, you're correct. You're quite correct as far as that goes. However, Adolf Hitler did, in fact, face trial. Just not in 1945 or 1946 when the Nuremberg trials were happening. Adolf Hitler faced a trial, a criminal trial, in the year 1923. And you might now be telling me, well, you illiterate, historically illiterate person, what are you talking about? What are you even talking about? Everybody knows that Hitler and the Nazis came to power in 1933. What are you talking about? 1923. Huh? You clearly don't know even what you're saying. Well, as a matter of fact, I do know what I'm saying. Let me tell you about it. It's kind of interesting. In the early years of the Weimar Republic, the notorious Weimar Republic. Of course, right now we're living in Weimarica, but our 1933 is coming sometime soon. It's proverbially 1933 sometime in the not too distant future, because again, history repeats itself. The thing is, the first time it was a tragedy, the second time it's a farce. So with everything going on with Trump right now, with Trump being called up or being indicted on what some say are trumped up charges. I bet you never thought of that little pun there. Trump being metaphorically or analogously compared to Hitler. Now, some may object to that, say Trump is no Hitler. Hitler was no Trump. There will be people who will be offended by that comparison, both because they like Hitler better or because they like Trump better. And knowing my audience, it's probably more of the former than the latter. But regardless, let it be known that I'm only comparing Hitler to Trump in the same sense that I'm comparing tragedy to farce, because that's the formula about history. History repeats itself. The first time as tragedy, the second time as farce. Now, in 1923, without getting too much into the weeds of everything, because I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of this time period, but I do know some stuff. I actually did an essay when I was in my discovery class. That's the gifted class. Ooh, I'm gifted. Yeah. Well, I made it into the gifted program in 10th grade. Before that, they didn't. They said, Andy, who? But then in the 10th grade, they said, oh yeah, we want you. We want you now. So they let me in, and guess what I did my report on? Fascism! You bet, you know it. Because I was fascinated by it. Even back then, even as a very lefty teenager, I was fascinated by the subject of fascism. And I actually read Mein Kampf from cover to cover, from start to finish. Now, when I say I read it all from cover to cover, did I put my brain on autopilot part of the time? Probably, yeah. I would say it's likely that I did. And I didn't really understand a lot of it. But still, I read it from beginning to end. Now, Mein Kampf, which means my struggle, roughly translated to English, Mein Kampf was composed by Hitler, or it was composed by one of his henchmen, one of the guys who was in jail with him. That he was basically dictating it to this guy. You can just imagine Hitler pacing around the jail cell, gesticulating and doing his thing, and his composer guy just faithfully writing down every word. And it's a 700-something page book. Goes all over the place. Talks a little bit about his life. A lot about his ideas and his beliefs and what he thinks what he thinks should be next for Germany. Why was he in jail, though, you ask? Well, Hitler was in jail because he, along with a couple of compatriots who had formed the nascent, I think I'm saying that word right, the nascent form of the NDSAP, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazis. Hitler actually first came into contact with this group, I think around 1920, when he was working for the Freikorps, just after the war. And Hitler was this bitter, angry ex-soldier who thought that his country had been sold out. I don't know enough to know whether he was right or wrong about that. They say, all the conventional historians say, well, the whole idea that it was that the German war effort was stabbed in the back by the politicians who signed the armistice, and that they were actually well on their way to winning, but then they got sold out by the faithless leadership. The respectable historians all say, "Oh, that was just a myth. That was bunk. That was fake news." But I'm inclined to be agnostic about it, just because I don't trust those fuckers. I think they're wrong about just about everything, and they lie habitually. So I don't know. They might be right about the stab in the back story being a myth, or they might be wrong. It might really have happened. In any case, Hitler was this ornery, cantankerous, ex-soldier. He fought, with some merit, some gumption. He was actually awarded a medal or two during the war, during World War I. Achieved the rank of corporal. And afterwards, he was working for this group called the Freikorps, which was out to sort of look into the subversive groups who were trying to undermine everything, and the leftists, that were attempting coups here and there. There were groups on the right, there were groups on the left. There was just a lot of chaos, and it was a bad scene the years after the war. But Hitler came across this group and in 1920, and he thought that they were interesting, but that their leader was kind of a dud. So he sort of muscled his way in and said, you know what, I have a better idea for this party. I'm going to lead it the way I want to lead it. And he kicked the guy out, the guy who started it all. He was gone and lost to history. But so this group, the NDSAP, they were plotting a coup, essentially, of their own. They thought, again, we've been stabbed in the back, and everything that's gone on since then, all of the like the post-war government, they are all just. This is just the patrimony of the traitors who stabbed us in the back when we should have won the war, but they sold us out, and now we've been humiliated before the world. And even though we're destitute, we have to pay reparations to France and to England, and in this very draconian manner, as was decided at the Treaty of Versailles. So anyhow, 1923, Hitler and a couple of his buddies, whose names escape me right now, they stage what comes to be known as the Beer Hall Putsch, or the Munich Putsch. Putsch just means an uprising, something like that. It's a cool word, though. It's a very German sounding word. I like it. And so they tried this thing, which was that they were just going to declare that the government was illegitimate, and they were going to go march on Munich, I guess, because they were mostly stationed in Bavaria at the time, not really in the north so much, not in Berlin, but they decided that they were going to model themselves after Mussolini. You know, you so often hear in descriptions of World War II that Mussolini was sort of Hitler's lapdog and was just following along behind Hitler. But really, Mussolini did it first. Mussolini successfully took over the government of Italy in 1920, and after the March on Rome, and he and his fascists took over the state of Italy. So Hitler figured, let's do the same here for Germany. But it failed. It did not come to fruition. The men who were marching in the streets were met with an army, and several people were shot, and Hitler himself, I think, sustained a wound of some kind before he fled the scene and hid, but then was arrested and was taken to trial. And it looked like that was the end. It looked like that was the end of this little flash in the pan, this National Socialist German Workers' Party thing. That, you know, it was fun while it lasted, but it's over now. But Hitler decided that when he was going to be put on trial, right? And he decided, you know, this is an opportunity. Actually, I can use my the oratorical skills that I have honed over the past few years. I can use those skills as a defendant in this case, charged with treason. And I can speak out and say why I did what I did. And he was expected, of course, to plead not guilty, but he didn't. He said, "You charged me with trying to overthrow the government. I am guilty. I freely declare that was exactly what I was doing. That is exactly what I tried to do." And he was allowed to speak out in this courtroom. A lot of people came and watched and marveled at how he just sort of took command of everything. And he said things like, if I'm a revolutionist, I'm a revolutionist against this revolution. And he said you charge me with treason, but there's no such thing as treason. Treason is irrelevant because the real treason was when we were stabbed in the back by the faithless leaders who sold us out with the armistice, and instead of letting us win the war in the battlefield. And he went on in this vein for a time, and people were there. The press was there from all over Europe, and it got written up different places. Like, wow, this guy Hitler, he's something else. This is probably not the last we've seen of him. And when it came to sentencing, Hitler got 5 years in minimum security jail. He got an extremely light sentence for someone who not only was charged with treason and attempting to overthrow the government, but who freely admitted to attempting to overthrow the government. Although, again, for him, it was not treason. That's sort of a semantic thing, But anyway, so he was sentenced to 5 years at a fairly cushy jail. He ended up serving 9 months, and in those 9 months, he wrote Mein Kampf. And when he was released from jail, he had this new book, so back then people read, people actually read books. So it was like, the Marxists, the communists, the left-wing people, they had the Communist Manifesto, they had Das Kapital. Now, the fascists had Mein Kampf to refer to. And so that was how Hitler spun his way out of this disaster. And we all know that a few years later, he and the Nazi Party finally came to power through the electoral system, no less. Not because they were ever voted in. They never got a majority vote, but they got enough votes in a plurality to succeed in a parliamentary system for Hitler to be appointed chancellor. And after the very fortunate timing